Hey everyone, welcome back to the arena. I'm MD, joined here by Covey, and once again, a really special guest that we cannot wait to introduce and get into a conversation with. Right before that, though, I have to show my love and appreciation to those that continue to show the same back.
What's going on, guys? As MD alluded to, we have a special guest, I believe, all the way out in Montana, if I read
Yeah.
correctly.
Yes.
And this is Julie Menanno. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in emotionally focused therapy for couples. She provides a ton of insight and advice for couples at her Instagram, at the Secure Relationship, that has over 1 million followers. She also founded and runs the Bozeman Therapy and Counseling Clinic, as well as the Secure Relationship Coaching. And, which is super exciting, she's releasing her first book, Secure Love, Create a Relationship That Lasts a Lifetime, that's coming out, I believe, at the end of January 2024. So, without further ado, first of all, thank you so much, Julie, for coming on here and just sharing what is. I love your Instagram. I love the work that you do, and really excited to get into some of it. But without further ado, why don't you just provide a background of like who is Julie Menanno and how you got to where you are today?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. Nothing fills me up more than knowing I'm doing a good job in helping. So glad you like the account. So I am a marriage and family therapist. I basically had, a family and a husband. I've been married for 23 years. I had 6 children, and I didn't grow up in a home that was very emotionally supportive. Not, like a lot of people, I didn't grow up in, the most horrible environment ever, but there was just enough lack of emotional support that I came out of that with not really understanding emotional needs, how to meet them for myself, how to find other people to feel connected to. So, but I always knew that I wanted love, a lot of love in my life and a family. And so when I had my kids, I started just kind of not really knowing what to do. I knew I did not want to recreate the past. And I just felt really desperate to figure out, what is it? What's the key here to relationships? Not just with my husband, but with all of my, my children and my friends. And I just wasn't able to find that anywhere. I wasn't, I was reading every book I could get my hands on. Nothing was really sticking for me. And so I just kept reading. And ultimately, I came across some work on self compassion. And that really kind of shifted everything for me. I started really realizing, wow, like I just don't have to beat myself up all the time. And then I really wanted to do that with my partner and my parenting, but it's not always as easy as just, flipping a switch. And so at the end of the day, I ended up going back to grad school because I just needed to know what's going on here. I need to know psychology. Like I need to learn it for myself instead of getting it filtered through self-help books. So I went back, immediately found attachment theory, latched onto that, learned everything I could.
No pun intended.
I was going to say, attached to attachment theory.
No, no, yeah. So I went back as really not having any interest in working with couples at all. I mean, it was more than a lack of interest. It was an actual aversion, like zero interest in working with couples. But because of, living in California at the time in Los Angeles, uh, most of the master's levels programs in California are marriage and family therapy degrees. So I had to get this marriage and family therapy license because that just was kind of the easiest path for me at that time in my life. And to get my license, I had to work with some couples to get my hours for licensure. So I saw the first couple and I was like, wow, this is kind of, this is interesting and also really challenging. This isn't a type of work that you can just kind of, use your basic therapy skills and get through. And so I had remembered learning about emotionally focused therapy for couples from grad school, and that really resonated with me. So I thought, I'm going to go get this training. And if nothing else, the rest of the time that I'm earning my licensure and I have to see some couples, I'll have something to do. So I flew out to Montana. Again, I was living in Los Angeles at the time. So I flew out to Bozeman because this was the first place that the training was happening in the country at that time. There's trainings all around the country all the time, but this one happened to be the following week. flew out to Bozeman. My husband jokingly said, "Look for a house, look for a property while you're out there." And I said, "Ha ha, I will never do that." Fell in love with Montana. 4 months later, my entire family lived here. You know, my husband had a job. I had a job. It was just crazy how it all worked out. But from that day that I went to that first EFT training, I have never taken on a new client that was not a couple. So I got hooked, fell in love. It's not just attachment theory, it's actually using attachment theory as it's alive in relationships and helping couples and partners develop a secure attachment between each other. And what I really love about this work is that I am helping people go home with what they're getting out of therapy. They're getting, they're going through this journey together. The type of work I do is every bit as much about their individual healing as it is their relationship healing. So that just feels really, really good for me. It feels like a very complete way to work.
Yeah, we'll get into attachment styles because I'm super interested. I want to start, I guess, two questions. But the first one is you mentioned like self-compassion and the ability to show your self-compassion being kind of a turning point in your life. How does that take shape, like for you? What does that look like? I guess I'll start there.
It looks like, just basically not being so hard on myself, not trying to be perfect, not feeling as if I have to meet these sort of objective standards that society puts on us to be a worthy human. I can forgive myself for shortcomings, and I just didn't understand that concept. I really did grow up, however I got this message in many different ways. I think from all sorts of directions, that the only way to improve in life is to grind yourself and beat yourself up and look at what's not working and just try to fix yourself. And something about that material just really kind of settled my nervous system into some new place where it was like, wow, I'm lovable. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to do all of, this achieving or whatever. And it just something really powerful clicked for me.
And, I want to go back to when you talked about your upbringing wasn't like as tragic. I think it's what you
Hmm.
mentioned as it could be, but at the
Hmm.
same time, you recognize that your emotional needs weren't met. And I think, as we try to continue to platform and educate what exactly emotional needs are, what it looks like to not have them met, can you be a little bit more descriptive or speak to like what that looked like growing up?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so we are emotional beings as much as we are physical beings, and we need for our emotional selves to be honored and validated and supported and reflected. And it's just, we live, I think, in a world where we're very achievement oriented, success oriented, physical oriented, and not a lot of people really know how to support the emotional selves of their own selves or each other. And that was the world that I was born into, and my family that was struggling. My parents were struggling with generational trauma, and that, of course, was put on me. And when there is generational trauma, that trauma it blocks emotional connection. It's everything is sort of anxiety and fear based, and when an environment is anxiety and fear based, there's a strong likelihood that it's going to be more of kind of like achievement, surface level based, as opposed to emotionally supportive. So I wasn't ever told, hey, what's going on in your heart right now? Like when I don't know, like throw that toy across the room, what's happening for you? What's going on in your body? Where's that pressure? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling frustrated? Like, help me understand. Okay, it makes so much sense to me that you're mad that I yelled at you earlier because that hurt your heart. You didn't deserve that. And, granted, we have to kind of do things a certain way to keep the house running, but at the same time, it's not okay to hurt your feelings in the process of trying to communicate with you. Never, so what I'm describing is just reflecting emotions, which is first of all just letting a child know they have emotions to begin with, instead of it being this sort of just vague bodily sensation. Validating the emotions, saying, hey, it's understandable that you feel this way, and comforting the emotions and showing that they matter by saying, I apologize for hurting your feelings. Um, or, I do care about you getting to school on time, but I don't necessarily put your education above your feelings in the sense that we're going to have big screaming and yelling matches all morning long so we're not late to school.
So now I'm going to make an assumption here because of what you just described in terms of your upbringing that like maybe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that in terms of let's dive into attachment styles a little bit and how you're specifically, and maybe you can start by just giving a little brief descriptor for the audience that maybe isn't as familiar as the expert or myself, who's not an expert but knows a little bit about them. But just talk about how your attachment style has evolved through the years and how like our childhood shapes often like how we develop these different styles in relationships and with ourselves.
Sure. So, I grew up having a sense of having needs, but not having them met, which is very typical of someone with an anxious attachment. Someone with avoidant attachment is more likely to cut off the need, right? And it not consciously, not as a you know, purposefully, but just sort of they subconsciously just manage to disconnect. So then they don't recognize that the pain that they carry from not having the needs met, although the pain is there, stuck in their body. Someone with an anxious attachment which was more my experience. Like I had a vague feeling and sense of wanting closeness and knowing that my needs weren't going unmet, but not really knowing what the needs were, how to put words to them. And so my way of coping was clinging, trying to be heard, trying to create closeness and safety. And, what happens is someone with an anxious attachment, they might get enough of the good stuff to know it exists, but not predictably or consistently. And so there's just always this sort of nagging hypervigilance of, am I going to get my needs met? Am I going to get my needs met? And a lack of the ability to trust that even when the needs are being met, that they'll be met in the future.
Yeah, and I think about myself specifically, and I got introduced to this idea of attachment styles through my therapist maybe a year ago at this point, which is crazy to think. But she had mentioned like, have you ever listened to attachment styles? No, no idea. What is it? Like, it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like you have more of an anxious one, and in the person that you're seeing has more of an avoidant attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe why these two, from what it sounds like, tend to attract each other, and then what creates the issues there?
Well, the complicated answer is that relationships will find a way to have emotional balance. Um, there can't, the intensity of a relationship, it's not going to work if there's too much intensity. It'll just be too intense, too much explosion. And it's not going to work if it's too flat. We need some heat, but we don't need too much heat. And so what happens is if you have someone that's really kind of disconnected from their emotions, they're kind of the flatter one, right? And then you have someone who's really emotive. That doesn't necessarily mean they're super emotionally intelligent, but they have the feelings and the emotiveness in their body. They're going to not, those two individuals aren't balanced within themselves, right? Balance is when you have access to your emotions, but you're not just chronically overwhelmed by them. So, what are you going to do? You're going to sort of subconsciously find a way to balance yourself out. So, a lot of times, anxious partners will be really attracted to what they perceive in the avoidant partner, maybe subconsciously, as more stable, more emotionally stable, that gives them a sense of safety. And then the avoidant partner will be attracted to what they experience as aliveness in the anxious partner. The anxious partner is kind of holding all the emotional energy for all of them, whereas the avoidant partner's over there keeping things stable. And even if two people come together, and maybe they both have a kind of a lean towards intensity, one will probably start to take on more of the stabilizing role, and the other will then make up for that by becoming even more emotionally intense. And so I have another, more reasons, sometimes anxious partners kind of gravitate toward avoidant partners because they just don't know what emotional availability is. They know what it feels like. Sometimes avoidant partners are the dating pursuers in a relationship. So they're getting that sort of need to be seen and tended to and wanted met at first until they start going into these negative cycles and then things start to not feel so good. The avoidant partner, again, will kind of be attracted to the anxious partner's emotional aliveness, which then gets, they start to get into negative cycles, and that starts to become really exhausting and draining. And yeah, there are a few other reasons. I've written a lot about why these two are attracted to each other, but the most important thing to remember, I think, is just that emotional balancing piece that relationships will find a way to do, however they have to get there, in a healthy way or in a not so healthy way.
So I think in my self study of attachment styles, I tend to be a little bit more avoidant. And I'm just curious, like, are there patterns in people's past that you can point to say, like, these are the types of circumstances that can lead to a more avoidant style versus anxious? Like, what is the rhyme or reason to how somebody develops one style versus the other?
Sure, yeah. So a very typical avoidant background is going to be, um, a lot of times, a lot of the needs are met in the child's life. Their physical needs are met, their educational needs are met. They might even have a relatively supportive, functional environment on the surface, but there's just no tending to the emotion. So early on, the child learns, don't bother showing up with emotions. You're either going to be shamed, or you're going to be ignored, or you're going to feel rejected, or you're going to be punished. Like some non-response or bad response is going to take place, and their nervous system just sort of deactivates their attachment strategy. And that doesn't mean that the needs go away. They just start getting those needs met in other ways. That might be overachieving. I'm going to feel a sense of worthiness and connection to the world through my achievements. Or I'm going to just sort of numb out and distract myself from this lack of emotional connection with anything that feels sort of stimulating, video games, sports, whatever. And so the pattern just continues to be throughout childhood. We just don't talk about emotions. We don't go there. A lot, it could be as things that we hear about a lot, like boys don't cry, or you need to be independent and strong, and if you start showing these weak, vulnerable emotions, you're not going to be able to make it. You'll get overwhelmed with them, or people will view you as weak. And so just kind of shove that part away. And then it just takes on a life of its own where you just do it without even recognizing it. And then what happens is you just don't ever learn how to meet yourself emotionally, how to help yourself in your emotional pain that we all have, even avoidance. And then you can't help other people in their emotional pain. And so that kind of gets in the way of authentic connection. Someone with an anxious attachment, they're going to grow up with also a lack of emotional availability. But again, the environment's just a little more unpredictable. Like sometimes they might get it, sometimes they might get responded to, sometimes not. So they kind of know, again, what they're missing, but still don't have a real consistent way to get the need met. So they learn to get big, they learn to protest, they learn to do anything that they can to be seen and heard. And it's better to be responded to if you're an anxious child than to just not responded to at all. So they'll do whatever they need to do to get some sense of responsiveness and closeness.
So are they the more like rebellious teenager, whereas the other one is a little bit more of like the lock themselves in the room type, or?
I would say that avoidants are probably going to tend to be more lock themselves in the room, but I think rebelliousness is can be driven by a lot of different things, and sometimes it could be more of the anxious patterns and sometimes more of avoidant. So I don't know that I would say rebelliousness in and of itself is linked to one or the other, but I would say that whatever is driving that person to rebelliousness could be linked to attachment or avoidance.
Yeah, I just
Sometimes
always linked it to, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if someone is rebelling because they're trying to distract themselves and trying to, kind of go to substances as a way to emotionally numb or
Um,
feel filled up, that's more of like an avoidant drive.
mhm.
Whereas if an anxious partner is just sort of acting out and trying to regulate with emotions or trying to be accepted by peers by doing these things, that's more of an anxious drive.
Yeah, I was only thinking the latter, but yeah, that's a good
Hmm.
point.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it's interesting because in that situation I mentioned earlier, as soon as I felt like the person I was seeing was starting to pull away,
Hmm.
I I wanted to then like I was looking for more like validation and that and like I was like, let's take the next step, like let's do that, and then she pulled away even more, and it
Sure.
was and that's when like this whole idea came up, and it was just really fascinating to me, and it was actually very validating for me to be like, oh, okay, like that's just that's who I am and that's who she is right now.
Mhm.
So I guess my next question is how can we work towards developing like a secure we haven't
Mhm.
talked about the secure attachment and it's not even I would call it attachment but like what the security in ourselves whatever
Yeah.
it's called
Definitely secure attachment. So
secure
we have to
attachment.
remember, we all have two relationships, our relationship with ourself and then our relationship with others. And in my work, that other is the primary partner, right? And so what's missing from secure attachment or what defines secure attachment is emotional safety, right? And that doesn't mean that you can use physical means to get to emotional safety, right? But the key component of a secure attachment is one, emotional safety, emotional comfort, and met attachment needs. And so then we have to go backward from there. Well, how do you get that? Well, you have to learn ways to communicate that are emotionally supportive, period. I mean, that's the only way to get there. And that communication can be verbal, it can be physical. Most people need, most of us are recognize the need for verbal connection as a way to emotionally connect, but there's also a big physical component to that for most people, right? And so my job is to come in and say, okay, I'm going to tell you what you need to do here, right? To get this emotional support on board so that you guys can communicate with each other, meet each other's needs, help each other in your dark pain places when they flare up, as we all have that happen, from time to time. Work through your problems together in ways that are safe and you're not, creating more problems than already exist. And the next step to that equation isn't just giving the skills, but it's also working through the blocks to using those skills.
And so how can for the people myself for example and the guy
Mhm.
sitting next to me people that are single and not in a relationship actively
Yeah.
how can you yourself work on so when I do find a partner that I'm in a more secure place relative to then my anxious attachment style coming out in
Mhm.
different ways.
Learn to have a good relationship with your own emotions. That's it. I mean, that's a secure attachment with yourself because it's kind of like kind of dividing yourself up into a parent or your kind of wise mind and your emotional mind, or however people like to conceptualize that, as kind of two parts where we do have this relationship with ourselves, right? And if you're an avoidant attachment, your work is to become more emotionally engaged. Figure out what's happening in your body when you feel uncomfortable, right? And you want to go to that place where you just want to kind of shut down and pull away. What's going on in your body? Where is that? Where are you carrying that need to pull away? Can we put a name on that feeling? Is your chest tightening? Who helps you in that spot when you start, let's say that chest tightening is a scared feeling or an anxious feeling or a sad feeling. Who helps you in that pain? Probably no one. How have you learned to help yourself? And how can you help other people? And how can you let other people in to help you? And with the anxious attachment, it's going to look more like how can I help regulate these really big emotions when they flare up, right? What are these emotions trying to tell me? They're trying to tell me I'm scared. I'm afraid that I'm going to end up alone again. I'm afraid that I'm maybe even not even lovable. And so what I want to do with those big feelings is I want to just start clinging or moving toward and kind of desperately trying to connect. And then that, there's a downside to that approach, right? So, what can I start to do differently to sort of find safety in my own body so that then I can, from that platform of safety, have more safe and deep, meaningful connections with others, and find people who can also engage with me, right? And so, to kind of summarize there, for the avoidant, it's to emotionally engage, and for the anxious, it's to emotionally regulate.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
And so, would the opposite of progression for the avoidant, for example, rather than engage with emotion, would the regression or the going in the opposite direction, would that then look like emotional detachment, like complete dissociation, or even picking up like nihilistic type point of
Mm-hmm.
view, maybe bigger picture and like life purpose and all of those
Mm-hmm.
things? Like, have you seen sort of like the wrong direction evolve?
I think if you start, there's always everything's on a spectrum, right? And if someone starts to get to that real extreme of avoidant level, then their lives are more disrupted by it. So they might just have smaller worlds. They don't, they have, you can correct me if I'm not going where you're going with this, but they start to not take risks. They don't socialize much. They don't want to date because that world is so foreign to them. They have very little connection to their own inner world, very, very little. And so it's very impossible for them to have any kind of curiosity about the inner world of another. And maybe they don't want to feel any emotion. So they keep they work jobs that are below their ability just to kind of stave away any kind of stress. Is that what you mean? Just like extreme kind of avoidance of life? Or do you mean more of that kind of narcissistic?
No, I think the former. I think you hit it
Yeah.
right on the head with like some of my own experiences of just
Hmm.
like as things have progressed in certain ways, it was almost like a disguised peace, if you will. It's like
Or,
you
yeah.
kind of find yourself in like a peace and quiet, and you're like,
Hmm.
okay, I'll take this.
Hmm.
But I think you start to realize what you're talking about feels more like consequence of not
Hmm.
working through, more engaging with emotion, and
Hmm.
that curiosity of somebody else's inner really
Hmm.
rang loud to me.
Yeah, that and then you got it's so funny. You got the avoidant over here, you got the
Sure.
anxious one
Yeah.
over here. We're like going back and forth.
What does your negative
I love
regression
it.
look like?
I
You
you
guys
know,
came together for a reason, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, but I think for me, I guess this is kind of vulnerable to talk about, but I'll do it because that's why I started the show. No, for me, it's that sense of like you mentioned, like not feeling lovable, and I think
Yeah.
and not feeling worthy of love, and it stems
Hmm.
from like I struggled with my sexuality for that. That's what my relationship with my sexuality for the majority of my life.
Hmm.
I've gotten into a much better place, but it still kind of shows up at times. And what's helped me is like self love meditation and just like especially ones that focus on like it'll guide you to focus on like what do you like about yourself, look at those parts, but also like what is challenging to like about yourself or love about yourself, like
Hmm.
show that place love, and that's really helped me, but that's for me kind of
Beautiful.
what it's looked like.
I think that's really beautiful. And I think that really ties into what I was trying to say about self-compassion.
Yeah, yeah, which I give myself now. I mean, like you hear it, it sounds cliche of like treat others the way you treat yourself the way you treat other people,
Right.
but it's so true, and it's
It
so
is.
like it's very transformative when you give yourself grace,
Hmm.
and also celebrate yourself, celebrate the little wins, like that kind of thing.
Hmm.
You had a quote on one of your Instagrams that I really liked, and it's very simple, but I think a lot of people could benefit from just hearing you talk about it. Like you mentioned, relationships aren't supposed to be easy; they're supposed to be fulfilling.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
expand on that because I think I really like that one.
Well, first of all, I think relationships can get to the point where they are easy. I do believe that exists, but that doesn't mean that they're supposed to be easy. But we do want them to be fulfilling, right? So I think in that particular post, I kind of use that cooking analogy, right? Which is good meals aren't necessarily, or cooking isn't necessarily supposed to be easy. The goal is to make a fulfilling meal, right? And sometimes you have to get in and you have to do the work and learn how to navigate the kitchen and learn which pots and pans to use and what ingredients go well together. And at the end of the day, you get to sit down to this really good tasting meal. And if you don't get it right the first time, you just got to have self love and realize, hey, this is just a process. I didn't learn this growing up. That's okay. I can learn it now. And then over time, you just start to get better and better at it. And then eventually, cooking can really become easy. But the goal isn't easy, it's fulfilling, just like kind of everything else in life, right? Nothing good comes easy. Most of the good stuff you have to put some work in. And
Yeah.
relationships really aren't that different.
Yeah, and I think about something that Jay Shetty said, but I'd love for you to answer the question as well. Is like for couples that are like, we lost a spark, we're
Mhm.
just, we feel maybe disconnected from each other.
Mhm.
Like I remember there's something that Jay Shetty said that really resonated with me, and he said something along the lines of, I forgot what the first part was, but like things to like keep love alive, or like what you should be doing with your partner. One of them
Mhm.
being trying something new together, and
Mhm.
then the other one being service, like doing some sort of
Sure.
volunteering charity together. Like maybe just talk a little bit when you have
Yeah.
a couple come into the room and have that kind of like that they're talking about that.
Yeah, so I work in a bit of a different way where I am doing a little more kind of emotional focused processing with them. But those kinds of advice are beautiful, right? So I might be looking at with a couple, what's blocking you from kind of going into this place, or looking for different ways to help them, right? But what I would say about those two examples that are wonderful is that the doing new things together is a way to bond, right? It's a way to see new parts of each other. It's a way to feel stimulated together. It's a way to connect with a sense of excitement. Any kind of emotional exchange is very bonding, and doing something together is going to create emotion, right? It will, because it's not, kind of mundane. Your body sort of has to light up in certain ways to navigate through something new. So we're creating bonds there, creating memories. And then the other one was gra- uh, giving back,
Yeah.
acts of service. I could not agree more with that, because that puts your heart into a place of gratitude, right? And you get out of that kind of, I read something on Instagram I loved the other day, which was the opposite of gratitude is entitlement, something along those lines. And entitlement is just probably the most toxic emotion, one of the most toxic emotions, because it just sucks away all the sense of gratitude for what is going well. And so I think when couples are experiencing that together, the act of service could just be like, I know with my husband and I, just being parents together, isn't, parenting is such an act of service in itself. And so I think it's just, to me, it seems like the root of that would just be gratitude and hearts opening up and really learning, keeping that appreciation alive. And I think too, just acts of service. I mean, I love acts of service. Like, nothing makes me feel better in the world than giving, because I don't know, it gets me out of my own darkness or something. Like, something about it is just so gratifying. And when you're experiencing those feelings with another person, it's just, it's like exponentially powerful, I think.
It makes me think in some ways, and I know this isn't necessarily what we mean to be explaining, but it almost is like you can remanufacture the love within a relationship in some ways. And so I'm just curious, like, can we differentiate like true love and like the fairy
Mhm.
tale, like I fell for this person versus like
Mhm.
we have things being stimulated between us. We have a heart full of gratitude in this moment, and there are things like having a kid that can open our hearts up again and bring us back together in certain ways. Is there a belief that like you can have a loving, intimate relationship with anybody then if you have that
Mhm.
point of view? And does that contrast with the point of view of like this one person was meant for me in the entire world?
I mean, I think that there are a lot of people that could be compatible with each other. I don't know that I believe that you have to be with just one person, right? I think people, I like how Esther Perel, I think she says the average human has six long-term relationships in a lifetime, just for all sorts of different reasons. I know for me personally, I would the idea of being with anyone besides my husband does not sound one good to me at all. Like that makes me even sad just to think about that. But, if either of us were to lose each other, I would just assume that we would both go on to find someone else to love and experience life with, right? And so for me, it's more of an issue of like, are we compatible and can we use that compatibility and kind of enjoy the same things out of life, have the same general goals and value system, even though we don't, people don't really need to see eye to eye on every single little thing. But do we have enough in common about the way that we want to live to use that as a platform to develop a deeper bond, experience life together, grow together as humans?
And that sounds like very intelligent and logical to me. And I like once had an English teacher when I was in I don't know, high school, and for whatever reason they were talking about like, oh, this one person was my soulmate. There was no
Mhm.
other person in the world that I could possibly like, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that's just being romantic or like dramatic in some ways, but not
Yeah.
necessarily true.
I don't think I would know. I think humanity is far more complicated than that. To be that
Okay.
feels very twin flamey, and I've been watching that documentary. And not into that right now. I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's
you
kind of what I
are.
was getting out of all of this.
Yeah,
Is like there's a lot of work you can put into compatibility in relationships. So it's just really
yeah,
interesting to hear that perspective so many years later.
yeah. That is interesting. It's sometimes I'm like shocked that people actually believe that, but people, yeah, yeah. I mean,
So
I'm not
on the
not knocking anyone believes,
yeah, of course.
but yeah.
Um, on the flip side, I don't know if if you get couples that come in that have gone through this, but I'm just curious for your thoughts on like because I know people can relate of like infidelity and
Hmm.
experiencing infidelity and how that can affect another human being.
Hmm.
And just the idea like can a relationship be repaired like between two people where someone cheated on the other person, and would just love for you to kind of get your perspective there
Hmm.
and how you work through that with couples.
Yeah, I mean, in the right environment, any wound can be healed, right? I really believe that. I mean, that doesn't mean every wound will be healed, but I do believe that most wounds, and cheating is wrong if you have committed to someone and that's the arrangement that you have, and you betray that arrangement, then that is not going to do anything helpful for the relationship, if that continues. But with that said, and that is going to create damage, and there will need to be a lot of repair work done around that. As a therapist, I have, I have a special kind of structured way of, how have I been trained to help couples walk through and navigate that healing process. And part of which is discontinuing the offending behavior, hugely important. But with that said, affairs don't materialize out of nowhere. So we also kind of need to go backward and figure out what was going on in the relationship and this person as an individual that kind of led them to the point where they felt they needed to deal with their feelings by acting out in this way. Because if we don't address that, it's either going to happen again or there's going to be a different problem in another form. And I also, just to talk again about Esther Perel, I really love her take on affairs that you will never have the same relationship after an affair, but you can have a better one. You can have a stronger one because you have worked through some of the stuff that led to that. And then, of course, we also have to recognize that some people have compulsive sex addictions and things like this that add another layer of complication to the issue.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think about like the idea of being in one of the partners being in just like not a good mental space and
Hmm.
maybe doing it and then feeling a ton of shame and guilt and like
Sure.
self-sabotaging, and when they're finally able to share or
Hmm.
share their truth or whatever happened,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it might hurt and maybe it won't work, but
Hmm.
if you have two people that are willing to like work on the relationship, it creates almost like a fresh start, and
Yeah.
then you have two maybe more you have the one individual who is no longer like beating themselves up and can like kind of get some inner peace that
Yeah.
they you know
Totally.
that and so I think
Yeah.
I love that quote that like it can actually be better
Right.
as a result.
I also love
Absolutely.
the idea that you have to go and actually address the root issues leading up to that type of behavior. And it makes me think about the cliche of like, oh, once he cheats, he's always going to cheat, you know? And
Mhm.
it probably, that cliche probably originates from the idea that most people, and I'll put men on the spot here, we're not doing the actual work that it requires to address whatever the problem was that then generated the behavior that led to the cheating. And so, to your point, it is
Sure.
likely going to happen again, but it's not because it's a characteristical trait of the person, but it's more because they are still suffering from an issue, whether it's within the relationship or not. Is that, am I
Yeah.
understanding that
I
correctly?
think, yes, I do. I think absolutely. I think that, we're all vulnerable to different ways of acting out our pain when we don't have a healthy way to do it. I might be vulnerable to, trying to think of, I'm vulnerable to a lot of things. I might be vulnerable to kind of like getting really distracted and letting my attention go all over the place and not kind of focusing in on what I need to tend to in that moment or something. Someone else might be vulnerable to lashing out. Someone else might be vulnerable to over drinking. Someone else might be vulnerable to having an affair, right? But it's all coming from the same basic wounds that there aren't that many different ways of a human to be wounded when you distill it down to its deepest emotional level. And so I would probably tweak when you say, mostly it's men and men aren't doing the work, because a lot of times, yes, a man or a woman might decide to act out on their emotional pain by having an affair, but most of the time that other partner has a role in it too.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean you can ever make someone have an affair or force someone to have an affair, obviously, but you certainly can play a part in the environment that leads to an affair or any other kind of acting out behavior, no matter, which partner you are. And so even if we did address that affair giving's partner, all of their inner work, we still most of the time are going to need to look at the relationship patterns also in that other partner's
Now,
work
that
too.
probably makes for a really tricky conversation because there's
Yeah.
someone who's kind of on the victim side of the
Yeah.
affair, then being told that they have a role in it.
Mhm.
That's got to be one of the trickiest
Yeah,
conversations.
you can't just bring someone in and throw that at them on day one. You have to really kind of create a lot of safety and validate their experience and really make a lot of space for their pain. And when you can do that and make a lot of space for it and create a lot of safety around it, then usually people do want to, when they feel safe and seen and heard and understood and know that, you know, they're going to be their pain is going to be comforted and not thrown out the window, and they're not going to be blamed. They really will open up a lot to self-reflecting about their role. And you also really need to push the idea that, hey, this, you didn't make this happen, this is not your fault,
Hmm.
but I'm here because I want you two to have a closer, better relationship. So you don't need to do any of this stuff that's not working for you. So let's all work together here. And a lot of times, that also is empowering. It's not like, oh, I just have to sit here being a victim and there's nothing that I can do, to help myself in my situation.
I
Is
love
But I
that.
certainly would never want anyone to feel like blamed or, like
Right.
anything like that. That would
Yeah.
that would be really counterproductive.
is there because it's funny, I've heard this before, the people that are like, "Oh, you're too young to go to couples therapy."
Oh
Like,
no, I
wow,
don't.
you're. I'm not saying I do. I
Yeah,
actually, I was
no,
on
no,
the. there was a situation where I stood up and I was like, "No, why would you be too young? That shows growth. That shows you're willing to work on it."
absolutely.
But is there any sort of that you notice a stigma around? I mean, I think there's more
Hmm.
generally a stigma around therapy still, although I think we're moving in a
Hmm.
much better direction. But is there an additional level of stigma around couples therapy?
It's hard for me to answer that because I'm so embedded in being a couples therapist, and like virtually everything I do, I'm surrounded by people who are
Right.
open to it. So it's really hard to answer that. I don't, I think if there is, it's so, like you said, so much better than it was even probably even 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago. I think that it could be that there's the problem for me is maybe isn't so much is there a stigma, but it's I think a lot of people they wait too long to get the help. And I really believe that if every couple at the point at which they decide, hey, we're going to have a future together and they commit to each other, if they just did 5 preventative sessions, that would save all sorts of future problems for them, for their kids, for, they wouldn't be coming to see me 10 years later with just, a decade of built up wounds that we now have to pick through and try to rebuild trust. It's better to do the work while trust is still alive because it hasn't had time to be eroded.
I think that's such a great tidbit, and it's actually a really good. It applies to therapy more generally too. Like forget couples therapy, but just therapy more generally speaking. I think
Absolutely.
a lot of
Yeah.
people, including myself, kind of hit like a rock bottom, and it's like, oh, well, we got a
Yeah.
lot to unpack here. Whereas now I still go every week. I don't think I quote unquote need it. I know I don't need it anymore, but I go as a way to learn about myself and
Yeah.
to more preventative, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Like you'll be okay if you don't go that week or that
Right.
month, but you want to stay on top of it. And yeah,
What
absolutely.
are like, 2 or 3 fundamental preventative measures people can take? I'm not to have
Mhm.
a therapist advertise preventative measures, but
Yeah.
to,
No, I
to the
do.
extent you're willing to,
I do
can you
preventative.
talk us through like some easy, do it at home yourself
Mhm.
preventative type measures that couples can learn from if they listen?
I can do better than 3, and I'll give you one. And if you just master this one, you're going to be far ahead of the game. Learn to emotionally validate. Everybody is crying for emotional validation. Everybody needs to hear, I get it. I understand it. I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to I'm trying. Gosh, I all I do all day is work with couples who give me examples, and then when it comes time to give them, I don't have them. But it's like I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Like that wasn't certainly wasn't my intention. If it wasn't, but I get that your feelings were hurt. I get that you were mad. It makes sense to me that you were mad. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. I know it's so hard for you. Yes, it's been a year since your dad passed away, but I get how painful it is for you when you look at those pictures and you see him and that brings it all back up again. And I'm so sorry and I'm right here with you. And the opposite of this is people just get stuck in all the time, which is, well, look at the bright side, at least you had so many good years with him. Or I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. That wasn't my intention, or
I'm
you
sorry you
shouldn't be
felt that
mad.
way.
I'm sorry you felt that way. Exactly. Yeah, which can be really invalid. I mean, that's a really invalidating line that a lot of people say when they think they're being really healthy. And it doesn't take away from your experience. It doesn't take away with kind of the facts or details of the event or the informational pieces. It really is just recognizing, look, I don't know necessarily how you got to this feeling, but I know it's there and I can accept that right now and I can hold you in that. And then we can talk about the other stuff later, or we can talk about my perspective later, which actually brings me to advice number 2, which is actually also really important. Stay on topic. Couples, they get into these arguments and they're just going all over the place, right? And nothing really gets resolved because they just start jumping around. So, a real game changer for couples is when they learn to just, okay, someone brings up a concern, we stay with that concern, we validate it, we try to hear about it, we understand it, talk about what we can do going forward before the other person brings their stuff in.
Those are. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and this, like, to me, because I'm a sales manager, and so I have a manager to rep relationship times 10, 10 other
Sure.
people, and coworkers. I mean, this spans beyond just like an intimate companion. It
Oh,
sounds like this is
absolutely.
something that can really enhance all levels of relationship, both personal and professional. So
Definitely.
I think that's actually really helpful to think about. Is not always trying to look to solve the issue in the moment, but just
Mhm.
let's start with validating what the person's feeling, how they're feeling, and whether I understand it or not, just validate it. And I think that's really powerful.
And
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think too, just to kind of piggyback that is that emotional safety is the platform that we solve problems from. We cannot really truly find solutions without that first building that platform.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I was like, I don't know, maybe so much as like this would apply to couples. I guess it would, but like something that I've thought about recently is like when I hop on a phone call, it's like someone's like, I need to talk. It's
Hmm.
like I think the one simple thing that you can do at the beginning of a conversation, whether it's a friend or a family member, or even I guess a partner, is like, how can I support you here? Are you looking for advice? Are you looking for someone to just listen? Like, let me
Yeah,
know how I can best support you. And I found that when I do that, it just creates such a more productive conversation because
absolutely.
there are times when people are looking for advice, but a lot of times people just want someone to listen.
Yes.
And I think that can be like you want coaching, whatever you're looking for, but just to get, I think like setting that standard or setting that
Mhm.
of like here's what we're going to discuss, I think can be really helpful.
And regardless, like building that platform first, that's the first step,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
is
So
really
let me
critical.
let me ask you something. That brings up a really good point. What message are you sending to that person when you say, "How can I help you?" What are you really saying to them?
I think you're saying I'm here for you.
Right.
That's it
Your
in
needs
in
matter.
whatever capacity that
Yeah.
looks like.
Your needs matter to me,
Yeah. I think you're
right?
also subliminally giving them a little bit of control in the situation, being
Yes,
like you
absolutely.
can kind of dictate the situation as to how you're getting your help.
Right.
That's actually really good what you said there. Your needs matter because that's how I feel going into the
Mhm.
conversation. Like I care about you. How
Yeah.
can I best support you? And it's done wonders for my relationships. Because sometimes I'll call someone and I'll just be looking for someone to listen, and here I
Hmm.
will be getting advice, or you shouldn't think this way, or you should do this and this. Like
Hmm.
that is so
Yeah.
counterproductive to what I'm looking for. And you could be giving the best advice in the world, but
Sure.
I'm not in
But
the
it's
space
not.
to receive it.
Absolutely. Remember when we kind of started and I said, growing up in an environment where you get the message, your feelings matter. And that's what you're doing is you're giving people that gift at the very beginning of the interaction, which is your feelings and needs really do matter to me right now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
So
everybody's nervous. We all need to know. Nobody's going to ever be their best selves if they don't know that their needs matter. That's why I get so frustrated when people say, well, you shouldn't expect other people to meet your needs, right? And I understand that. Like, we all need to be able to meet our own needs, but we all also, in order to feel safe and close to another person, need to know that we matter to them.
that is so profound. Julie, your book, Secure Love, Create a Relationship That Lasts a Lifetime. Maybe just talk briefly about what inspired you to write it and what people can expect when it comes out. Like, what should we really, I know I will be a reader, but like, what should I be
Yeah.
looking for, super forward to?
Well, so what I am trying to do really more than anything else, I have tons of skills and tools and explanations and, making sense of things. I think this book will really help people more than anything, probably make sense of their situation. But really, if I can just get people to soften their hearts to their relationship and to their partner and to themselves, I feel like I will have done my job. Because when we can get to a softened place is when we can do our best work, whether that wherever, whatever that arena is, but especially in our relationship with our partner. And I think so many people right now are trying to work on their relationship from a hard heart, like hard boundaries. I shouldn't be responsible for your feelings. And it's just gone really a little bit too far and it's not really helping. I think a lot of couples get, damaged from going into that hard place. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of switch that tide and say, hey, this work is about connection. It's about love. It's about being motivated by empathy, not anger, not a fear of your partner being mad at you, but love and concern for their feelings. So you want to help them and they want to help you instead of just this you versus me kind of thing. That you're really not enemies of each other when you get stuck in these really awful negative cycles, which I talk about in the book, and that really you're just trying to reach each other. We're all just trying to feel safe and connected in the world. And if we can just get that in our closest, most intimate relationships, the world is just a better place. I mean, it all really starts there. And of course, our relationship with self. And so, what I do is I start off by really explaining attachment theory in a really understandable way, especially for people who, I have this unique window into attachment theory because I work with it as it is alive with couples, right? And so I'm really kind of trying to give people a little more of a nuanced understanding than maybe they're getting elsewhere right now. That's what I would like to believe. And then I talk about how these attachment styles, particularly this very, very common anxious avoidant pairing, create these negative communication cycles together, which creates insecure attachment between the two of them. Now, in addition to the insecure attachments they have with self and their own emotions. And then, here's what this looks like. Here's what this is, guys. And I promise you that every single person reading that book will relate to the chapter on negative cycles. Then I'm going to go into how to interrupt them when they flare up. Now, how to prevent them. This is the environment that I need you to create. And here's the tools to create it. That's going to prevent them. And when they can't be prevented, because most people are going to have negative cycles in their relationship from time to time, no matter how healthy they are, what can we do to fully repair them? Because when we fully repair them, that is part of the preventative environment. And then I kind of go into healing deeper injuries like affairs, things that not just affairs, but any injuries couples have had where the just trust has really been shaken up. There have been, really painful feelings of betrayal. Again, doesn't have to be an affair. And sometimes both partners have these injuries. So how do we heal those? And then I just go into to kind of some other considerations on top of just, that can coexist with attachment issues like mental illness or substance abuse. And then we have a chapter on sex. And then I end it with a chapter just full of scripts. It's like, okay, your partner's annoying you. You want more help around the house. You're not feeling emotionally validated. You need to bring up a concern. And I just give the words because so many people, they're like, okay, these principles are great. These concepts are great. They make so much sense, but I need the words. And so if people can just take those words and integrate them into their psyche over time and help them become their own,
I mean, if you heard that, people, and you don't want to go out and buy that book, I don't know what to tell you. You're listening to the wrong podcast. But thank you for that overview. I'm genuinely super excited to read it. It sounds like there's some awesome, like, tangible feedback. And now, Julie, I know that once the next relationship I get into, it's going to be so secure that
Yeah.
I'll never need to learn about attachment styles again.
I got
And
my
you know
two
what?
fundamental pieces of advice.
You deserve that. You deserve that, and you're working hard for it, and you will get that. So
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We have one question to wrap this up, a
sure.
little fun question, and it is if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh gosh. Anyone in the world, dead or alive? You know what? I don't have anybody but my husband on that list. I have to be really honest. Like I just
What a
don't.
what a heartfelt answer. Wow.
Yeah, I don't. Because if it's like someone I admire or something, like I don't even know what I would talk. I don't know. Like it just sounds awkward.
Fair enough.
I,
Those
I
answers
actually,
are.
it's interesting because I did have a dinner with Esther Perel that I
I
keep
was gonna
talking.
ask. I was gonna say, would
Yeah.
Esther? Would she be there? Would she be the one?
No, because I love her work. I really do. But there's other people I love their work. But I did have dinner with Esther Perel and it was great. But it's just a person. It's just always just a person. So it's like, you know what? You know who I'd have dinner with right now? My best friend Jamie. That's who I'd have dinner with because I
Wow.
haven't seen her in a bit, and I don't we just laugh the whole time, and it's just so much fun. We've been best friends since high school, um, but yeah, I think I'd want to be with someone I know at that dinner.
That's where I'm headed after this. So that's I'm gonna get dinner with some of my best friends. So
There you go.
I get
Okay,
it.
when I really ask you, like when you really think about it, would you rather be with your best friends or would you rather be with a stranger trying to like make
That's true. Although I do feel like I do feel like my friends will still be my friends, and I would love to go to get dinner with like, oh man, The Rock. I think would be awesome. He just
That would
seems
be
so
cool.
like
Yeah.
he's so humble, despite being like the most famous man on the planet. Or Kevin Hart, I
Yeah.
think, because he's got. I just there's some people I'd really love to pick their brain.
They would probably go together. They're like best friends.
Oh,
You can just get a party of
put me
three.
in a party of three. I don't
Is
care
there
where it is.
is there a part of you though that might just feel like like you couldn't relax, like intimidated? I don't
Oh yeah.
know.
You know, I think about that, Julie, but then we've
Yeah.
had some people on this podcast, and it goes back to exactly what you just said. Like, they're just human beings.
Exactly. Yeah.
And oftentimes they're super, super nice and they're super, super humble. Like, that's why they are
Yeah.
at the places they are. And so, part of me, I think the old version, insecure version of me, for sure, I would have been scared shitless. But this version of me, like,
Yeah.
maybe I'll
I
embarrass
love
myself.
that. I love it. And you know what? I can just feel how good you are at connecting. So
Thank
I
you
can
very much.
imagine that that would be a really fulfilling dinner for both of you. I did just think of someone. I'll
Ooh, there
go.
we go.
Gabor Mate. I would love to go to dinner with Gabor Mate.
Ooh, I just bought his book.
Which one did you get?
The huge one on like trauma. I think the newer one on like
Yeah.
healing and trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet. I can't wait. I actually have been following him for a while and I've really, I always have felt that resonating with his work, but I didn't realize how much I loved him until I started reading The Scattered Mind a few weeks ago. Oh my God, it's just amazing. So I'm in love with him now. So
Yeah, he's a good one. I mean, what a story. All right, we are going to wrap this up, but guys, I will drop the link to Julie's Instagram. We will show to pre-order her book. Please go get it. Secure Love: Create a Relationship That Lasts a Lifetime. Thank you so much, Julie, for coming on
you're
here and just sharing
welcome.
your wisdom.